guys, so today's video we are going to be reacting to my previous top 10 horror movie lists. I have one from 6 years ago and one from 4 years ago. I have been doing it that long, yes. Every video I've ever done is still up on this channel. You guys can see that. So these are still there, and it's been a while since I have seen these videos. I don't even know what movies are on them. Also, before we get started, I want to say that I have been more active on my horror Instagram. I don't know if you guys know that I have a horror themed Instagram. I used to run it as like a aesthetic page, kind of. It's just like black and white pictures. That was too hard to maintain. Plus I was stealing art. Anyway, now I'm maintaining it as like a personal horror page. So if you want more horror stuff from me, I'm more active over there. So I'm showing more of my movie collection, I'm gonna do some polls. I'll do like horror Q&As on the stories. I'm doing brackets right now, like posting different brackets. So just go check it out. It's a good time. Anyway, let's get into this video, and also I'm going to be sharing which ones have stayed and therefore telling you my updated top 10 horror, which I am already anticipating the comments. Guys, it changes all the time. Just because I like these movies and consider them top 10 doesn't mean you have to consider them top 10, okay? So we're all just different people with different favorite movies. Keep that in mind. Please don't judge me. Let's go.
Remember me? I would not blame you if you didn't, because it's been about, 5 centuries since I posted a video on this channel. Let me just get you up to speed.
What is that attitude? Okay, let's just fast forward. We don't need the intro.
Basically, as it is right now, these are my top 10, and they will change every year. Some of these are pretty constant and will always be some of my favorite movies.
Yep.
But there's about 5 to 7 in here that are kind of, well, I don't know if they're recent. Some of them are really recent. Some of them are more in the past like 10 years that will change around. So they may not always be my favorites, but
I talk way too much.
I do want to say that if you don't like my movie choices or if you disagree with any of them, we don't need to argue in the comments. I've gotten things like, oh, if you don't like this movie, you're not a true horror fan, or
that has stayed constant. I still get those comments all the time. We'll probably get those comments on this video.
One of my favorite movies of all time is The Thing, and I cheated, and I'm including both of them in this list, the original and the remake. I love them both so equally because...
Okay, so that is still on my list. The Thing, the original, the 1982 John Carpenter The Thing, which is actually a remake in itself. I consider it the original. I've never seen the original Thing, but I consider the 1982 John Carpenter The Thing, you know, a classic movie, and that is still on my list. I call it a remake. It's a prequel. I actually just rewatched it the other day for fun, and I do really love that movie. It's not on my list. So I don't know, I'm not gonna say it's a favorite of all time, but I do really, really love it. They just didn't use practical effects in it, which was really disappointing considering the original used so much of them. And actually I posted a whole spiel on my Instagram about The Thing, about how much I love it, so.
The next one is Cabin in the Woods, and I know this one a lot of people loved and a lot of people hated, and I understand.
Cabin in the Woods, no longer in my top 10 movies, but I do obviously really enjoy that movie. I own it. I've rewatched it many, many times. It is a very, very good movie, but it's no longer in my top 10.
Next one is a classic that I hadn't seen up until about like 6 months ago. Well, okay, maybe 6 to 8 months ago, and that's Friday the 13th, the original.
Yes, Friday the 13th is a favorite of mine. It is not in my top 10 movies though, but yes, I do really love the original Friday movie.
Is one that I've seen recently, and it's my favorite one that I've seen in the past probably 5 years. Favorite horror movie that is that I've seen in theaters in the past 5 years that's come out, and that's Mama. I did a video on Mama, so I'll link that.
Mama was in my top 10 for so long. It's probably going to be in the second video that we're going to react to, but I'm not going to include it in my top 10 anymore. I think there are movies that are more deserving. I do really love that movie and watch it all the time. You know, Guillermo del Toro worked on it, and he's my favorite director, producer, writer, whatever. He does everything. So obviously I still love that movie. Actually, that goes without saying with with all of these. I still love all of these movies. They're just no longer on my list.
This would not be a complete video of my top 10 favorites without, of course, The Ring. That is the original favorite. I can't say it's still my #1 favorite movie of all time, but I will say it's definitely top 2 or 3.
When has it never been my favorite of all time? Okay. I do not remember saying that at all. I don't think it's ever wavered as my first favorite, so I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know who this person thinks is her #1 favorite horror movie of all time, because as far as I know, it's always been The Ring. So maybe I'm just misremembering past me. This was a hard year, 2013, so maybe I'm just like, I don't know.
Movie I wanted to be Samara. I'm even gonna name my daughter when I have one day, Samara, and most people think that's really weird.
I actually just had this conversation with Ryan yesterday. We're still, you know, thinking about Samara. Anyway.
So I can safely say this next movie is my #1 favorite movie of all time. It encompasses everything I love about life. And it's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And I did also do a review on this, so link below. And
who is this? That's so weird how things change so much. I can't believe I put Tucker and Dale versus Evil over The Ring. Like, I don't remember that at all. Oh my god. Okay, well, Tucker and Dale, I considered it my #1 back then. It's not even on my top 10 anymore. I mean, and by the way, making a top 10 movie list is so arbitrary because it does change. It can change tomorrow, and I talk about that in these videos. It changes all the time. There are, of course, going to be some movies that are consistent throughout all these lists, but to say Tucker and Dale's my #1, that's a stretch.
The next one is Misery, and this, for me, is another classic. It's a Stephen King one. I love all Stephen King adaptations from book to movie.
Now, I made my list of these top 10, my updated list today, so Misery is not included, but that I think is pretty consistent of one of my favorite movies of all time.
So this next one is the thriller that I was talking about, but it's too good to leave out. Like, I don't think I cannot say that this is one of my top 10 horror, because it is a horror slash thriller. It's technically, I'd say, more thriller. It's not too horror. And that, you know, talking about it makes me want to watch it again because I love this movie, but it's Seven, starring Brad Pitt.
Why did I think I was gonna say The Village? Okay, Seven, interesting choice, I guess. You know, I do enjoy Seven. It's really, really good. Really well done movie. Not in my top 10, and I do agree with Past Me, more of a thriller, but yeah, sure, I don't, that surprises me.
Okay, we're getting down to the last two. The last
Finally.
two I think are gonna be the most disagreed with in this list.
Okay.
Hands down, because they both are kind of recent. The first one's Sinister, and I decided to put this
Okay, I'm gonna hear my explanation.
in here because I
good.
loved it so much. I've seen it multiple times now, and just thinking about the plot and everything within it, I really liked. The twist did catch me off guard when it happened in the movie, in the theater when I watched it.
Okay, yeah, I like Sinister. I actually just watched it the other day when I did my video for my main channel. I was vlogging my day, a day in my life, and actually doing a work day for my horror channel. So if you want to watch, you know, what my day-to-day life is like when I'm working for you guys, check out my main channel video. But it's ironic because I put on Sinister while I did my puzzle, you know, like a relaxing movie. Sinister is, you know, so I enjoy it. Not in my top 10.
Some people hate these movies, but it's Paranormal Activity. I had to throw it in there. I had to, because the second one scared me more than anything in the theater, and
the second one did make me jump very bad. It was the only time I ever audibly yelled in a theater from fright, but it was a jump scare. So was it, I mean, it was kind of followed through. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Paranormal Activity. Not in my top 10, I would say, but obviously I love those movies. They're classics. Okay, so that's the first video. That one 6 years ago. Different person. Who was that? What was that list? That was a hot mess of a list. I don't know, but you know, I'm not gonna shame Past Me for putting those movies on the list. I am gonna shame past me for saying Tucker and Dale versus Evil is my number one, because what was that? Okay, this video is from almost exactly 5 years ago. So here we are.
Hey guys, long time no talk. I posted that random video last time.
I got Invisalign. If in case you didn't notice, the first video my teeth were still crooked. This one I'm filming with my Invisalign in, which is one of my regrets that I did when I had Invisalign. Sometimes I'd take it out. This one I got full rubber bands in, like, I had to fix my teeth, but why did I have to film with it anyway?
It is my top 10 horror movies, and this takes me months to prepare.
The list?
Or this one at least took me months to prepare. The other one I kind of put together haphazardly, like, yeah, I guess that one's a favorite. This one I actually took hell long time to think about. So
okay, so that explains a lot with the first one being so last minute put together. This one I apparently spent many months putting together. I doubt that, but I guess I worked really hard on it, so hopefully this one's a little bit more accurate.
But like I said in my last top 10 favorite horror movies video, this is ever changing. There are some that stay pretty constant, but some change around a little bit because, as we know, new horror movies are being released every single year, so it can change. I tried,
which it does, let me tell you, because some of the movies on my list today weren't out when these videos were created, so.
First ones that came out of my brain. Number 1, Blair Witch Project. Now this one was not a favorite and was never a favorite up until probably in the last year or so.
Oh. Okay. So Blair Witch Project is on my top 10 list. I guess I hadn't really watched it in 2013, or I did and like didn't really appreciate it then, but obviously with more perspective as you get older, you're watching more movies, you come to like have favorites that are like classics that set precedent for other movies. So I think Blair Witch is one of those for me.
Number 2, The Village, and this one actually is not one of my top in this list. I can say it should be towards the bottom, but I had recently watched it when I was forming this list, and so that's why.
Oh, yeah, that happens. Okay, so when I make lists, sometimes I will have only seen the movie once or had watched it recently and really enjoyed it, so I put it on the list. I think that happened with the first video as well. I knew The Village was in there somewhere. I remember putting it on a favorites before. Obviously, The Village is very talked about on my channel. I love it. It's not a top 10 favorite horror movie because it doesn't really end up being a horror movie after all, right? I will say that today's list is all movies that I've rewatched multiple times. They're ones that aren't like super, well, actually one is really recent, but I have rewatched it multiple times, so, but we'll get to that. We don't need to talk about that yet.
Number 3 is The Ring, and this has been my favorite horror movie of all time for years and years and years because it is to this day still the most horrifying movie I've ever seen.
Okay, but apparently not though. See, she didn't even remember. This was 2 years after the first video. I didn't even remember then that I said Tucker and Dale versus Evil was my favorite movie of all time. So what happened in 2013? Like I said, it was a rough year, so.
Number 4 is The Thing, John Carpenter's version of it.
Yep.
And the reason why it's John Carpenter's version is because of the real effects in it. I love real effects. I love when movies.
I agree. Yes. See, I dropped off the prequel in this list. I'm like, you know, we're gonna drop that one off. It's good, but you know, I already explained why.
Number 5 is Mama, and this is very similar to The Ring for me. The, you know, creepy woman kind of thing.
Yeah, Mama was in my top 10 for years and years after I saw it. Yeah, it's not, like I said, in my top 10 anymore, but yeah.
Number 6 is Alien. I'm gonna say the whole trilogy because I cannot pick just one of them. Actually, if I did pick any of them, it'd be Aliens 3 cubed.
Yeah, so Alien 3 was in my top 10 for a while. I say trilogy here, but really I meant Alien 3 because I think that's the best one. I know that's controversial to say. Alien isn't on my top 10 right now, but obviously those movies are classics and love them.
Next one is Honeymoon. Ironic, because that was the last video I just reviewed. So any video or any movies that
Yeah, like I said, sometimes it was movies that I had just seen that I put on these lists, clearly, with Honeymoon. I love Honeymoon. I have rewatched it so many times to this day. I am obsessed with that movie. Is it in my top 10? No. But you know, it's really, really good.
Next up, we have The Babadook. Very similar to every other thing on this list. You might see a pattern here. Very supernatural.
See, my favorite genre has been supernatural for a long time. Babadook, obviously good. Not in my top 10, but yeah, it's good. I support past me putting it on a list.
Down to the last two guys. So number 9 is Tusk. And this one is one that's a little bit weird to be on this list to me. When I look at this list, that's the one that stands out to me as like a little off, but I can't.
Okay, at least I addressed that that's an odd choice for me back then, because yeah, Tusk is really, really disturbing and probably is maybe my top 30, but I don't know if I mean, it's not my top 10 today, but obviously that changes. I love Tusk so much. If you haven't seen it yet, please go in blind. It is really good, but yeah, not in my top 10.
And lastly, The Woman in Black. This is just a classic horror ghost story. Like, that's why I love it, because it's so pure. It's so
pure. You know, I don't hate that choice for past me to put in a list by any means, but not in my favorites. It is really, really well done. Love Daniel Radcliffe. Pretty much anything he's ever been in since Harry Potter, I am obsessed with. But yeah, I mean, I love Woman in Black, but I don't see why I put it in my top 10. It's not that special or like that well done. I don't know. So looking at my updated list today, we only have 3 that have stayed consistent throughout at least one or both of the lists that I have made in the past. Obviously, favorite movie of all time, The Ring. I think that's gonna stay pretty consistent. I don't know what 2013 me was thinking putting Tucker vs. Evil above The Ring. That's weird to me, but The Ring is obviously my favorite thing. The Blair Witch Project, glad to see that on at least one of the lists because it is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that I think will stay pretty consistent from here on out. Obviously, John Carpenter's The Thing has been the most consistent clearly throughout all of these lists. Now we're gonna get into my updated ones, and I'm gonna go through these kind of fast because this video is already pretty long. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 1974 edition of Texas Chainsaw. I love this movie because, for one, it can never be created today with the conditions that were put on the actors, and that's not like necessarily a reason to love it because they were pretty much tortured on the set of this movie, but I think it really paid off in the final product of the movie. And if you don't know about the history of it, I would really look into it because it's kind of disturbing. And yeah, okay, so the rest of these are gonna get kind of controversial, so just bear with me. This list is made for today's era, so it could last a month, a week, I don't know, but these are ones that I rewatched that are like good go-tos for me that I would rewatch today, even having seen them really recently. So they're just like movies that never get old for me, basically, is what my like gauges for these movies. Get Out, I love a lot, and I think I fell in love with it even more having rewatched it recently. It's just such a great movie, and I do love Jordan Peele as a director. I love his like artistic abilities and like the subtleties that he includes in his movies, so I wanted to include Get Out. I really liked Us as well, and I think I even said I liked Us more than Get Out, but I don't think that holds true to today's standards. I think Get Out is just, yeah, my favorite that he's done. I'm putting Triangle on this list, guys. The more we talk about it on this channel and the more you guys are watching it and saying how much you love it, I don't think I've had one person watch that movie since I've recommended it and say they didn't like it. Like, that movie is just so well done, especially for its era. It's so creative, and I'm obsessed with that movie and could rewatch it over and over again and still like enjoy the like story development and character development. Oh my gosh, that movie is just so good. So I'm gonna talk about it again in case you guys haven't watched it yet, but Definitely one of the most underrated movies of all time, and definitely one of my favorite movies. The Taking of Deborah Logan, I decided to put on this list because that is one that I always go to rewatch. I think it's genuinely creepy. I think it was really well done with the budget that it had, and it was just really smart about all of that, and I just think it's a really, really fantastic film. Is it perfect? Not necessarily, but it is an amazing found footage film, and that's one of my favorite subgenres of horror, so I wanted to have at least two found footage movies on this list. Next is It, 2017, the original, not the original, but like the first part of It. I do like the second one just as much, but I feel like that'd be way too controversial to include both in the list, so we're not gonna do that. But yeah, It, 2017, amazing. One of the best movies that we got that year was actually really good because we got It and Get Out, and those two are just now some of my favorite movies of all time. I saw It re-released in theaters late last year before the second one came out. Best experience of my life. I went by myself and I was just like, I never wanted it to end, and that tells you, like, when you feel that feeling when you're watching a movie, that's a really good sign that it's gonna be like a really good, like, classic favorite, at least for me. So the next one is 13 Ghosts that came out in 2001. I know it's a remake as well. I love the early 2000s one, and I have 3 early 2000s now on this list because that is my favorite era of horror, as you guys know, just personally, because that is the era that I grew up with loving when I was like in my teens and early 20s. Well, I was in my teens. In the early 2000s, I didn't get into my 20s until 2010. I know it's like a silly, cheesy kind of movie, but I just love the early 2000s-ness of it with like the soundtrack and everything. I think it's perfect. And then every time I watch that movie at home on DVD, I have to go through and watch all of the little stories for all the ghosts. I love them. And then lastly, the most controversial to put on this list, but I talked about it recently and said that it was gonna be in my top 10, so it should come as no surprise to you. If you want to guess real quick, it's a recent movie. Gretel and Hansel. Now I know what you're already writing a comment. I know, just, you know, pause the video, finish your comment, whatever you gotta do. Look, I love Gretel and Hansel. I think that was a nearly perfect movie for me. It was like the aesthetic that I love. The soundtrack was everything. The visuals in that movie obviously were way stronger than the actual plot. I'm not denying that the plot of Gretel and Hansel and the story development wasn't the best. I still really loved it as like an art piece, and everything about it for me worked. So I think it's one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. So it's definitely in my top 10 of all time, and I think it'll probably stay there for at least a while, but who's to say? These change all the time. Like I said before, these lists are arbitrary, and there's really no point to creating a top 10 because they do change consistently if you're a horror fan. Obviously, we're gonna have some that remain our top movies that really have lasted throughout the years and are always go-tos. But generally, you can't really judge a horror fan based on what they say their top 10 movies are, because this isn't necessarily an accurate representation of my taste in movies. But these are the ones that I would probably recommend to anyone when they ask, like, what are your favorite movies right now? These are what I would say. Anyway, I just thought it would be fun to look back and see what used to be my favorite horror movies and judge past me, although that's not really fair because, like, I can't judge her. She, you know, was valid as a horror fan back then, and I had to start somewhere, so yeah. Anyway, make sure you check out my horror Instagram page. I will have it linked down below, and leave any requests that you want me to do on this channel, any video ideas you have for me or reviews that you want me to do. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you soon.